Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Leading with Grace. And I am so excited to share with you the content of today's episode, which is called Shadow Work and Navigating Shame. Now, some of you may know that I have been working on being a trauma informed coach. And my first certification course started a couple of weeks ago, and it's been so amazing. It's been very overwhelming. There's a lot of information, but I am like soaking it up and drinking it all in because it resonates with me so deeply on a spiritual level, on a mental level, on just an emotional level. And I know that this certification, this knowledge on trauma is so important to all of us, to you and to me, because we all have it. If there's one thing that we all have in common, no matter where you live, no matter what your life experience has involved, no matter the language or the ethnicity or any of that, it's that we all have gone through and will go through some level of trauma. And much of the trauma has not been processed, has not been unpacked and metabolized. And just coming to realize this makes me even more passionate about learning to not only be trauma informed, but to become a practitioner and to meld the mind work, the thought work with the embodiment work, and learning how to utilize the mind body connection for a full healing. And so, if any of this resonates with you, and if you want to talk about it and just geek out on it, then will you like reach out to me and book a call with me so we can do it together? Because I love it so much. But anyway, okay. So, getting on to today's topic of shadow work and navigating shame. First of all, what is shadow? And so, I'm going to give you their definition, and then give more context to it. And this is how they define shadow. It is the adaptive survival strategy that keeps us from deeper contact within ourselves. It is to be stuck in the past and to project that energy to others that keeps us from healing within our own self and outside of our own self as it relates to others. It is also the part of us where the trauma has not been processed, it has not been packed, it has not been metabolized. And in past episodes, I've always talked about how we're all light and shadow. And I wasn't talking about it from the context of trauma. So it was really fun for them to use the word shadow and how that is relevant and related to trauma. And so they then go on to talk about how in this light and shadow is an awareness. Okay. So I want you to kind of think of it as like your favorite pie. Okay. And for me, I love a really good apple pie. And it is apple season. For me, it is in October. And so I just want you to imagine this apple pie coming out of the oven. It's hot, it's bubbly. You can see how the sugar has caramelized and the steam coming out of it, and it's so hot and you want it right now, but you know you have to wait. Gotta wait. Like for me, my rule is 15 minutes. Wait 15 minutes, let it calm down a little bit, and then you dig in with some nice cold ice cream, right? But when that pie comes out, I want you to imagine that pie as if that is your full 100% awareness. Okay. In other words, it is your full experience, your life experience. And then I want you to consider what it would look like if you only took 4% of that pie out. Just cut 4% of that. It's probably a very, very small sliver. That 4% is the awareness in the light. That is your conscious awareness. Everything else is actually in shadow. Isn't that crazy? When they gave us that statistic, it seriously blew my mind. And I'm like, what? So most of how we are operating is because of the shadow parts of ourselves, and that it impacts our memories or even lack of memories. It impacts our thoughts, our felt sense, our relationships, our behavior. Isn't that so crazy? And that when we bring in the somatic and embodiment tools to heal from trauma, to start to bring in light, it will expand our awareness to this shadow part of ourself as it relates to self, as it relates to others. And so I just want to kind of take a moment, just kind of let it put a pause right here and to let you know that this 96% that is not in our conscious awareness, there's a purpose for that. Okay. Now, if you remember, our brain has one of the main responsibilities of our brain is to protect ourselves. Okay. Is to protect you from you and to protect me. And this 96% that is not in awareness is a protective mechanism. And it's protecting the vulnerable parts of ourselves, of the unmet needs of the past, and even the present. It protects the vulnerable parts of our connections, our relationships, our experiences. So it is a strategy that we use to protect and to keep us alive. So I don't know about you, but when I heard all of this, I was like, okay, so how do we begin to unpack this 96%? Like how can I begin to swing the pendulum a little bit more to the other side so that I can increase my awareness from 4% to maybe 5%, maybe 6%? Right. And so, in other words, how do I come to know what I don't know? Because if this 96% is outside of my awareness, then how do I even know it's there? Right. And so, wait, and that was my page that I'm turning. So, just to let you know. Anyway, and so what's so interesting is that in this 96%, it is driving all of our actions. It's driving our thoughts. It's driving our feelings. In other words, trauma is in the driver's seat of our life. And that embedded in the shadow is shame. And shame is always connected to a sense of unworthiness. And when they were talking about all this, I could tell that my breathing was starting to get shallow. And there were points in the lecture where I was holding my breath. And I had to actually slow myself down and just begin to consciously breathe as they were talking about shame, unworthiness, trauma, shadow. And so, if this is what you are experiencing right now, I just want you to know that I see you. I understand you. I've been there. And I also want you to know that there is a way of, of getting unstuck. There is a way of beginning to start regulating yourself. I know that because I am experiencing how to do this. And so, something that the lecturer invited us to do, because I think this is something that I love about these therapists that I am learning from, is that they understand what happens when these topics come up, that I was not the only one going through a freeze mode at that moment. Like many others were experiencing that too. And so what they did is they invited movement. And so I invite you movement. So if you are sitting down listening to this, I want you to get up and I want you to go and walk around in your home. Go up the stairs. If you have stairs, go up the stairs, go down the stairs. Do some jumping jacks. Wiggle your fingers. Pretend that you are sitting and running in place. Bounce. Whatever you are doing, I want you to consciously create movement so that you can not stay in this holding your breath freeze mode. So now, after you have done this, I want to ask you a question. And the question is, what is the opposite of flow? What do you think is the opposite of flow? And you can come up with words like being still, sitting, immovable, be stuck, to freeze. And these two last words, stuck and freeze, are the two words that they begin to use to describe what is the opposite of flow. And so when we are in freeze mode, when we are in stuck mode, okay, it's because there is some level of shame. And this seriously blew my mind because I did not know that when I would be holding my breath and when I was in freeze mode, that was shame manifesting itself. And that in regards to shame, especially in therapy that has to do with trauma, their goal is to have conversations that are not fear-based. And I was like, how is that even possible? How do you talk about shame where it's not fear-based? And their perspective and their understanding of shame is that it is actually an evolutionary design, that we are all wired for shame and that there is a purpose and value in it in our lives. And that also blew my mind because I'm like, how is that possible? How is there a purpose for shame? Like it actually can help me. It can actually up level me. How is that even possible? And so there's a functionality to shame, and it is the inhibitory effect, freezing or deep pause from a somatic perspective. In other words, it is a recognizing a behavior that can harm us and others, and to recognize a behavior that is against our morals and values. So shame is basically the one with the red flag that is that's holding, that's like waving it and saying, whoa, something's happening or something that you're doing can harm you, can harm others, or that it is against your morals and values and principles. So then how do you befriend shame to navigate it? How do you and how do I begin to utilize this pause, this freeze mode to our benefit, to our own survival? Now, to understand what shame is from a befriending point of view, from a non-fear based, is an example that we were given. And as moms, this happened to me. And if you are a mom or a parent, I bet this has happened to you in some form, where you are playing ball with your child or your kids are playing ball, and it's in the front yard. And you tell the kids, make sure that the ball doesn't go out in the street. And if it goes out in the street, don't run after it. Like, tell a parent, tell me, right? And so as you're watching the kids playing ball, next thing you know, what's happening? The ball goes out in the street. And what do the kids do? What does your child do? Runs into the street to get the ball. And so what would you do as a parent? You're going to yell at your child and say, "Stop. I told you not go into the street." At that moment, that child is going to freeze within because they know that their behavior not only went against your direction, but that it can be harmful to them and possibly to others. And so I just want you to just kind of keep this. And if you have a memory and experience, I want you to utilize that too. So just take that memory and just kind of put it to the side for just a moment, because I'm going to tell you two things about shame. Actually, two kinds of shame. And the first is there's healthy shame, and others call it guilt versus toxic shame. Now, I have heard of healthy shame from Jennifer Finlayson Five from one of her courses, but I didn't fully understand why it was considered healthy shame. I didn't really know that. And so the way they broke it down was really amazing. So I want to break this down to you and then utilize that experience of the ball running, going out into the street experience, and how that can help to understand this principle of healthy shame versus toxic shame. So, healthy shame is focused on the behavior and not on the person. And there is always a way back to connection and belonging. So, what does this mean? That there is actually a normal cycle in our everyday life. And it goes like this: it goes rupture, freeze response, repair. And so, what does rupture mean? And so let's go back to that experience of the ball going out into the street. Okay. When that ball went out to the street and your child ran after it, that was a rupture. And it is inherent in every relationship. Okay. That's when something just goes awry. All right. And so there is that rupture. You're going to yell at your child. You're going to tell that child to stop. Okay. They're going to go and have a freeze response because they know that their behavior was harmful. So there's going to be a level of shame there. Do you see that? But this is a thing. And this is what it means when healthy shame, that there is a way back to connection and belonging. You take that child and you begin to repair the rupture. You take that child and you explain to that child how that behavior was not safe, and that you cared about that child. You cared about the well being of that child and how much you love him or her. Do you see that repair? That is the way back to connection and belonging. It strengthens a sense of bond and trust. And I loved what the therapist said, in that he put it this way: that it is a way back home to each other. I'm going to say that again. It is a way back home to each other. It is a way back to belonging. It is a way back to movement. And once you're able to repair, then what happens? Your kid is ready to go play ball again in the front yard. And guess what? The ball might go to the street again. So again, there will be another rupture. And hopefully, I would hope that your child will not run out into the street. But if so, then you know that you can complete the cycle of rupture. Then there will be a freeze response. Freeze response in you as a parent, freeze response in the child, and then go into repair, which is also a co-regulation. And you get to co-regulate with each other so that there is a sense of bond and trust and connection again. Now, let's compare that to toxic shame. Okay. Toxic shame is pervasive, and that when there is a rupture, it continues on beyond the single moment. So, in other words, it never fulfills the cycle of rupture all the way to repair. Okay. And it also says in toxic shame that the person is the problem and that the relationship is broken. There is a feeling of exile, alienation, and separateness. It is saying that you are a risky person versus this is a risky situation or moment. And the individual stays in rupture. And when they stay in rupture, they actually stay in freeze longer. They stay in shame longer. It's almost like they are frozen in time and they're never able to really move forward. So that is toxic shame. That's in the shadow. And because that is so painful, it goes into our unconsciousness versus consciousness. And so, in this shadow, what also keeps us from not knowing what we don't know is that when we are in freeze mode, we can't feel anymore. So it's there, but at the same time, we don't know that it's there. Now, how do you get unstuck? How do we begin to unstuck ourselves from shame? Now, remember when I said that shame can be like something that's holding up a red flag and trying to get your attention? All right. It is trying to get your attention to shadow parts of you that you are not aware of. And it can be triggered by everyday relationships of the present moment. And so, how to begin to get unstuck? The first one is to name it. When you are feeling shame, you name it. This is shame. And for me, what shame feels like, it seriously is a freeze mode. It's seriously a freeze mode. And so for me, I just feel like in my core, it stops working. I want to stop breathing. I'm like holding my breath. And I feel like this lump at the base of my throat. And it's like I'm trying to be as still as possible. Because if I'm still, then nobody will see me. Nobody will know. Like that's like what goes on in my mind when I'm totally still and frozen within. And so the first one is name it. And not only name shame, but to name what is going on in your body. What's vibrating? What's not vibrating? And so just like how I describe shame in my body to you, it might be different for how shame manifests in your body. And so I want you to name it. Name what's going on, what's moving, what's not moving, what's stuck. Are you breathing? Are you not breathing? Do you see a color? Do you see a shape? Do you see an imagery? For me, that lump at the base of my throat, it's like a black coal. It's not smooth. It's kind of like coal, it's kind of all rough, and it's bigger than the diameter of my throat, and so I can't move it up. And so it's describing it in that way. And then when you describe it that way and name it, then to take the next steps of becoming curious. Because shame wants you to hide. And that's what I want to do when I'm feeling shame is I want to hide. And so when you are choosing to take the step of curiosity, then what you're beginning to do is to take that light of awareness and begin to shine it just a little bit on the shadow. It could just be just a tiny shift of that flashlight of awareness to begin to normalize the triggers in shame and shadow work. And then from there, to ask yourself questions. Why am I feeling shame? What has happened? What's going on? And then now that you are beginning to have some awareness of what's going on in your inner experience, you can begin to ask yourself questions. What in this situation is my responsibility? How much control in this moment do I feel I have? What do I perceive is in my control? And is there anything else I need that I can give myself? Now, in answering those questions, you can do it verbally or you can journal it. But to do so in being curious with the emotion of shame, not to get away from shame, but to look at it from an outside perspective, from an observer's perspective. Again, what in this situation is my responsibility? How much control in this moment do I feel I have? And is there anything else I need that I can give myself? And so, as you are doing this, you're shifting from outside of you because you might be thinking, well, if this person didn't do this, or if this person didn't say this, or if this person would stop doing this, then I wouldn't be feeling shame. But when we become introspective of our inner landscape of shame, our inner experience, we begin to get curious about it and ask questions. Then we are shifting from other to coming home to the self. By naming our needs, by recognizing our responsibility. Because in trauma, we lose that locus of control. We don't feel that we have any control. So when we are asking ourselves, how much control in this moment do I feel I have? You're recognizing your responsibility and your ability to have control over the situation. Not over the other, but for your own control. And that one thing that they said in this lecture, which just blew my mind, and I actually had to listen to it over and over and over again, is that he said that some element of repair that does not have to, okay, so let me see if I can read this. That you can actually finish out the cycle of rupture. Okay. A rupture is a circumstance. And then you're going to go to the freeze mode or the freeze response, which is your shame. But that you can actually finish out the cycle to repair. And that it does not have to involve the person that created the original rupture. Let me say that again. That you can fully complete the cycle and reach repair. And it does not have to involve the person that created the original rupture. When he said that, two words came to mind: forgiveness and repentance. And how those two things can actually be so personalized with the Savior Jesus Christ, so personalized with our Heavenly Parents, that they're there to help you to fulfill that cycle of rupture, freeze response, and repair. And how critical this is, especially if a rupture happened years and years and years and years ago with a person that may have died long ago, or you don't know where that person is, or that person doesn't care. That you can actually come to a place of repair and to increase that 4% of conscious awareness, maybe by 4.5%, maybe even 5% awareness. into the light. I'm just, as I'm talking about this, I am in complete awe how the mind body connection does know how to heal. And that God in heaven has made it so that we have the capacity to heal, to bring greater light into our shadows. And that we're not meant to do this alone. We're not. And that this is part of our human experience. And so if any of this resonates with you, if any of this is what you are desiring, to understand the shadow parts of you, of why you do what you do and you can't figure it out, I want you to book a call with me today. And let's talk about it. Let's see, what is it that you're trying to find greater understanding, and the impact that greater understanding and awareness can have in your life and in your relationships. All right. Thank you so much for coming on today. Until next time. Bye.